Welcome to episode 65 of the Becoming Mind Strong podcast. And today's episode is a continuation. In the last episode, we talked about where to start. Again, we're talking about this concept of the pyramid, right? At the bottom is our physical health, in the middle is our mindset, and at the top is what we're calling our soul's work or our soul's journey or living in alignment or whatever term you want to use. So in the last episode, we dove deep into where to start with your physical health, both in terms of nutrition and if or when you're ready for it, workouts. In this episode, we're going to start diving into the other two tiers of the pyramids. We're going to talk about where to start when it comes to mindset training and where to start when it comes to your soul's journey. Check it out. In the last episode on physical health, I gave the kind of disclaimer that if you're not new here, if you've been in the Mind Strong world for a while, you probably know a lot of the techniques that I teach, right? You've heard me say to track your food for 5 to 7 days. You've heard me talk about baby steps and momentum. The same is going to be true for the first part of this conversation. The tips, the answer to where to start when it comes to mindset, for me, are always the same. Not because we aren't individual sparkly snowflakes, but because when it comes to training your mind from a neuroscience perspective, right? Nothing about this is about standing in front of the mirror, beating our chest, repeating mantras, and posting inspirational memes. When we talk about mindset, we are talking about unwiring belief systems and neural connections that no longer serve, and consciously wiring in new ones that help us step into this empowered life that we're consciously building. So for me, my steps of how I suggest starting that are always the same no matter who I'm speaking to, especially in a general context like this, where it's a podcast and I'm speaking to a large audience all at once. So I say that to say, if you've been here a while, some of this content is not going to be new. When we get to the soul work, it will absolutely be new. This is not something that I've talked about before, though I did reference it in the intro video. So again, take what you will. For me, I am a huge fan of hearing things again and again because we always catch new things as we learn. Maybe there's something you forgot. Maybe there's a piece to this puzzle that you missed in the past, and it never hurts to hear it again. If you're new here, buckle in, because some of this is my favorite stuff to talk about. Like macros, workouts, I love that stuff. I can talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but to me, this is life. When we talk about mindset, when we talk about soul work, this is life. This is why we're here. This is what we do. This is who we are as humans. So buckle in. So my first favorite exercise for mindset is this. And I always like to I feel like there's a lot of disclaimers happening. I always like to give you the disclaimer that a lot of this mindset work, number one, is going to feel super hokey. If you are new to it, it's going to feel like some of the most ridiculous stuff you've ever done. And the answer to that is good. It should. Because if you were to continue talking to yourself, meaning the inner monologue that goes through your head all day that we all have, it might be to various degrees, but we all have an inner monologue going all day long. If you were to talk to yourself the way that you always have, it's not going to feel weird or new. It's not going to feel hokey. The whole point of this is that we are unwiring the old and rewiring the new. And in doing so, it's going to feel foreign. You're going to have thoughts like, who the hell am I kidding? This is not how I talk to myself, right? That's a common one. This is not how I talk to myself. And the answer is exactly, right? That's the point. The point is we don't want to talk to ourselves the way we've always talked to ourselves. So I'm going to teach you my two favorite exercises for dipping your toe into the water of mindset work. And I referenced this in past episodes, but it bears repeating because for me, I'm a very visual person. And I'm also a neuroscience nerd. So as I do this work, I visualize what's happening in my brain as I'm doing mindset work, as I'm making conscious decisions about building habits. I'm picturing what I referenced in an earlier episode. So every time you think a new thought or do a new action, in your brain, a new neural connection is formed. As I said, you can go on YouTube, you can watch this. It is the nerdiest, coolest thing ever. You can watch new neural connections being formed. When you repeat that thought, when you repeat that action, there's a stuff called myelin that serves like cement. It coats the neural connection with every repetition until you have like a full-fledged, I like to think of it as a road, except that full paved road is what we call a habit. We are a result of our habits. So when I'm making a decision, do I want to work out today or not? Do I want to track my food or not? Right? Do I want to pay attention to my inner monologue, or am I just sick of it and I'm going to let it beat the crap out of me today? Right? The answer is not always going to be yes. We're not always going to make the most self-serving choice. And instead of stepping into a place of like, I should, I shouldn't, I must, I mustn't, I will literally visualize, okay, well, if I don't go to the gym today, that's okay. The world's not going to end. And which neural connection am I coding, right? If I go today, even though I don't really feel like it, now I get to code a new habit. I get to work toward building a new habit through coding that myelin. That's the level of nerd that I am. That's how I go through life, is I visualize this stuff. And the same is true, right? We said that neural connections, that myelin coding, is both in thought and in action. So for the purposes of today's conversation, where we're talking about literally rewiring our brain for habits that last, for inner monologue that learns to be our best coach instead of a raging asshole, same thing. I'm starting with this explanation again because there, on the days where I'm like, God, like this mindset work is exhausting. Like I don't want to red flag my thoughts, which we're about to talk about in a second. I get to choose. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole, boo-boo, right? If you want to be a jerk to yourself today, the world's not going to end. And I'm reinforcing a neural connection that's already really deep rooted in there because I've spent decades doing it. Or I've got this little fledgling new neural connection that isn't cemented in as much because it's new to me and it feels hokey and it feels weird. And I get to make the choice to consciously cement that one in place. And again, it's not that you're going to make the healthiest choice every day, but sometimes having that visual of why we're making the choice helps us keep making it, right? Mindset work is not something we can visually see. We can't look for a bicep bump. And even that takes a long time. I don't recommend using that as your source of progress. But this myelin stuff, when we can visualize, I'm coding a new neural connection, I'm consciously building a habit, that helps us step into our power of choice sometimes. So when it comes to mindset work, the first exercise, it's very similar in terms of tracking your food for 5 to 7 days in the context that all we're doing is shining the light of awareness, right? Some of us are more aware of our internal monologue than others. Some of us have never noticed that there's a little voice in our head that talks to us all day, every day, right? Sometimes I say that to people and they're like, holy crap, who's living in my head? I had no idea that was going on. Other people are like, oh yeah, I know that voice. It beats me up all day long. Some people have done some of the work and they're like, no, like that voice is actually pretty nice to me. We have various levels of our relationship with our inner monologue, but we all have one. Now, if this is new to you, if you haven't done much of this work yet, again, there's no judgment, there's no shame, there's no blame. You are taking the steps right now. And the first step is to simply shine the light of awareness. The only thing you're going to do, there's no judgment, there's no should, there's no shouldn't, there's nothing like that, is you're going to put a little red flag every time you hear that little voice be a jerk to you. And I will warn you in advance. Number one, you're not going to catch it every time. Number two, you may go into overwhelm with how often it happens. It has been my experience coaching in this industry for years now, that if you are newer to red flagging your thoughts, it is shocking. It is mind-blowing. It is life-changing. But first, it feels icky to notice how much we beat ourselves up in a day. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to give a presentation at work, have it not go well. And then afterwards, when we hear that voice, be like, who are you kidding thinking you could do this role? Who are you kidding thinking that you'd get that promotion? Red flag, red flag. What we're not going to do, or what we're going to try our best not to do, is go down the rabbit hole. Oh, now you're beating yourself up. Rachel said not to beat yourself up. I shouldn't beat myself up. Why do I suck at this? Why do I suck at the exercise? Now we've gone down the rabbit hole of shoulding on our shoulds. We'll put it that way. There's no judgment here. It's, again, just like macro tracking, it's happening anyway. What we're doing right now is we're just gathering data. So as you go through your day and you hear that little voice in your head be a jerk to you, red flag, red flag. Nothing to change yet. That's not part of the exercise. We're simply red flagging our thoughts. If you start to feel overwhelmed, if you're like, okay, I get it, Rachel, like I'm a jerk to myself, noted, it's too much, let the exercise go and move on to the next part. Okay, I suggest doing that for at least a couple of days. For some people, it might be a day. You might be like, okay, I got it, noted. Other people will be like, wow, this is super interesting. Let me keep this going for 3 or 4 days. There's no right or wrong. Again, just like tracking your macros, we're just getting a bird's eye view. We're shining the light of awareness. Step 2 to the mindset work is the part where it is going to feel hokey as hell. I think we did an entire podcast episode on this in the past. So if you want to dive even deeper, go back and listen to the podcast episode called Talk to Yourself Like a Kindergartner. So I'm going to give my favorite story to introduce this. I'm just going to do it a little faster because we have a whole episode on this. But I want you to pretend that you're sitting on a park bench, minding your business, enjoying the scenery. And this little 4-year-old girl, I think kindergartners are about 4. I taught middle school, so I don't know, but I'm going to go with 4. She runs up to you and she is sobbing. She's like snot crying, can't get the words out. And she's like, like the full shebang. And you kneel down to her level, you ask her what's wrong. And between her snot crying, between her gasping for air, she tells you that she doesn't know how to tie her shoes. So in that moment, you have a choice. You're either going to ridicule her. You're going to be like, you can't tie your shoes. Like, what is wrong with you? You suck at life. You're never going to learn to tie your shoes. Like, give up and go home. For the love of God, like, please don't ever do that to any human, let alone a 4-year-old. If that was your go-to answer, please stay away from children. Or the other option that I would hope most of us are going to choose is we're going to kneel down to her level, right? Maybe we rub her back a little bit. We breathe with her, give her a hug, whatever she needs. And we're going to gently and slowly first reassure her and then take her through the steps to learn. There's going to be zero expectation that she's going to get it the first time or even the 50th. And every time we're going to reassure her and we're going to do it again and again. And we're going to be patient and we're going to be loving and we're going to be kind and we're going to do all the things that we know kids need to learn a new skill. And now here's my question for you. At what age or at what stage of life did we as adults decide that that's not what we need? At what age, because it happened for most of us, we made a decision, not consciously, that the answer to being successful, the answer to having drive, the answer to being the best at what we do is to be a raging asshole to ourselves. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. The way, yes, you may have seen success so far. You may have drive. You may be like, Rachel, my work ethic's going to go to hell if I'm not a jerk to myself. And that is blatantly false. The way that we level up, the way that we fully step into our power, the way that we create the life of our dreams and build success, whatever that looks like for us at the next level, is by training that inner monologue to be our best coach instead of a raging asshole. And the way we do that is through this tool called talking to yourself like a kindergartner. Now, I've used this analogy before, but I want to put it out there before I get into the logistics of this exercise. It's a very common response, what I just touched on. People say, the second I start being nice to myself, I'm going to become soft, right? I'm going to lose my drive. And my answer to you is, think about your favorite teacher in school, right? Most of us have that one teacher. They may have been strict as hell. Usually they pushed us harder than any other teacher. But what they didn't do was belittle us or berate us or make us feel like crap about ourselves, right? They could be strict, they could push, but the reason that they were our favorite is that they set the bar high, but they supported us on the way up. They helped us believe I'm setting the bar high for you because I know you can achieve it. They didn't tell you, you suck at this, you're never going to get there, do better. They would not be our favorite teacher if that was the case. And it is the same exact thing when it comes to how we coach ourselves. Being a jerk to yourself is not the reason you're successful. It's the thing that's holding you back. You may have experienced success, but it is the tip of the iceberg of what's to come when we train our mind to be our best coach. So in step 1, all we did was red flag those thoughts. No judgment, nothing to do, nothing to change. We just noticed that without training, our inner monologue is a jerk. That's human nature. We get into a whole conversation about our caveman brain and why it's doing that. It's not doing it to be a jerk. It's doing it to protect you. Our job is to teach it to protect you while being a coach, not an asshole, which brings us to step 2. This is where it's going to feel super hokey. Now you're going to add a step to those red flags. Okay, we'll go back. You gave a presentation at work. It bombed. It didn't go well. Now you're all in your feels about to go down the rabbit hole. Man, I freaking sucked at that. That is super embarrassing. Who am I kidding thinking that I would ever get that promotion after the shit show that just happened? Pause. Take a deep breath. If you were talking, and you can insert whoever's most powerful to you, it could be a grandchild, it could be your own child, it could be your best friend, it could be little you. Right? For me, it's either using my nephew or little Rachel. Those are very powerful to me because as a teacher, as a nurturer, speaking, how would I ever talk to a child harshly? Right? If you have kids of your own, you can use them. If you have grandkids, if kids aren't the thing for you, you could use your best friend. How would you talk to that person in that moment? Right? You would most likely tell them, you know what? Yeah, we're not here to sugarcoat. That didn't feel good, right? That was embarrassing. That it felt like a letdown. And there's data to be gathered here, right? We're not here to gloss over and pretend that didn't happen. And what can we do? We're not here to fix right now. We're just here to acknowledge. It didn't go as planned. It doesn't feel well. I got it. Noted. Nobody's sugarcoating this. First of all, you had the balls to get up there and do it, right? Last time they asked you to give a presentation, you flat out said no because you were too nervous. So the fact you tried, right? We're not sugarcoating. We're not fluffing you off. That is a huge deal. You got up there and you did it. And that is growth. That is step one. Now, what we learned from this is we need some coaching, right? We need to get comfortable speaking in front of people. Maybe we need help from someone in the department who does this all the time and knows it by the back of their hand. So maybe step two is I go talk to, Susan in accounting who does this stuff all the time and ask her if I could take her to coffee and get some tips. But the reality of the situation is, yeah, it sucked. It didn't feel good. We're not glossing over that. And there was growth here. I freaking did it. And now I know what I need to work on next time. It doesn't mean I'm going to magically flip a switch and feel great about what happened. And it doesn't mean I have to go down the rabbit hole of shame, blame, and beating myself up. The more we start to do this, go back to that neural connection conversation we had. The more we start to do this, the more we start to unwire the jerk self and rewire in this coach. This takes time. This feels super hokey and uncomfortable in the beginning. And what's going to happen as you practice and you form those neural connections and you code that myelin is that 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, you're going to look back and you're going to go, holy crap, who am I? When something happens, I'm nice to myself. I coach myself. It will get to a place, and I'm telling you this from personal experience. When I hear women talk, or anyone, but especially women in my field of work, and they're talking about beating themselves up, it hurts my heart because that is simply not how I speak to myself anymore. And there was a time I absolutely did. We all do. But when you've done this work with time and consistency, what starts to happen is you can't even imagine being a jerk to yourself like that. And there's no judgment around it. There's empathy. There's, oh, honey, like, yes, I know what that feels like and it's awful. Let's do the work because you deserve better. One of our coaches has my favorite expression. When someone starts beating themselves up in one of our groups, she'll say, don't talk about my friend like that, right? Because the person's talking about themselves, but that's her friend. We would never talk to other people the way that some of us speak to ourselves. And we have to start doing the work to consciously rewire our brain to be our best coach instead of that raging jerk. Now, when we go back to our pyramid image visualization, right? The bottom was our physical health. The middle bridge was this mindset work. And the top of this is our soul work. You've heard me say this a few times throughout this season, but to me, that mindset work is the bridge. Right? We cannot live this life of unleashed energy, unleashed power, stepping into our dream life if our body's fighting against ourselves. We will not have the belief in ourselves. We will not have the capacity to step into our soul's work, our aligned life, if our mind is working against itself, if it's being an asshole instead of a coach. That's why this mindset stuff is the bridge. When we get to the top of the pyramid, when we start to talk about your soul journey, your soul's work, living in alignment, the life that unleashes you, there are action steps we can start taking to identify that. And just like we talked about with physical health, this is not black or white. This is not like, well, I can't start this stuff until I'm at my dream weight. I can't start this stuff until I've completely wired in being my best coach instead of a jerk. That's not how it works. The more we get the bottom of the pyramid in check, the more we create space and capacity for the top. So the exercise that I'm going to give you for your soul's work, for your soul's journey, I'm keeping it brief because I touched on it in an earlier episode, but I want to go a little slower with it. Here's where I suggest starting. On a piece of paper, you're going to make 4 columns. Okay, maybe you did this in the last episode, but again, I want to be more intentional with this. The first column is going to say in alignment. Okay, first column, in alignment. Second column, not in alignment. Third column, time in alignment. Fourth column, time not in alignment. Okay, this is a very basic exercise. This isn't rocket science, but I will tell you the power of writing this down and seeing patterns was, when I say life-changing, I'm saying that quite literally. Like in my own healing journey, stepping into this soul work, I remember one morning, it took me 15 minutes. I sat down, I did it in notes in my phone. I didn't even make columns. I just made lists. And that was the day that things started shifting. I remember that as a milestone day where I started consciously building even more of a life in alignment, a life where I am doing my soul's work every day, where the vast majority of my day is spent in activities in alignment and less time is being spent not in alignment. It's never going to be 100%. That's not the point. But again, it's about consciously building. Now, in the first column, you're going to feel into it. None of this is thinking. This is feeling. What lights you up? There is no, oh, that's too silly. There's no, oh, that's too big. There's no, oh, that's too small. If what lights you up is traveling, put it down. If what lights you up is eating donuts, put it down. But we're not just talking about makes you feel good. When I say lights you up, I mean that thing where you're like, oh, if I could spend every waking moment of my life doing this, I would, which I guess for me is kind of eating donuts, but that's another story. What are the things that set your soul on fire, that unleash you? Right? I gave my own example before, deeply connecting with people, learning people's stories, being in service to others. Those are things that light me up. Boxing, weight training, yoga, meditation. These are all things that when I'm doing them, I am in my center. I am in alignment. What are yours? Okay, the second column, what takes you out of alignment? Again, there's no thinking, it's a feeling. You know, when I even hear the word taxes, my whole body gets tense. Put me in front of an Excel sheet and my body is like full on visceral reaction, no. Being around people who complain all the time. Not to say that we never complain. That's part of life, right? We all have our stuff we talk about, but people who are just, the world is out to get me, woe is me. Sorry, boo-boo, like 10-foot wall. I'll be here for you when at times, but I'm going to protect my energy. I can't do it. Right? What are the things that take you out of alignment? One of mine I shared earlier was when I spend too much time mindlessly scrolling on social media, I start to feel kind of icky and low energy. Fast food is one for some people. Being in front of a computer for too long, not being out in nature. By the way, nature and music are big ones for alignment for a lot of people as well. Columns 3 and 4, no judgment, simply data. Think about a typical day. It's not going to be the same every day. In a typical day, how much time are you spending in your in alignment activities? And then finally, how much time are you spending in your activities not in alignment? You can either make a list. You could even write in the amount next to each activity. Again, we don't need to overthink this. There's no right or wrong. The goal is, just like macros, just like red flagging those mindset thoughts, the negative thoughts, the beating yourself up thoughts, we are shining the light of awareness. We are not going to do a 180. Right? We're not going to go from eating fast food 5 days a week to eating nothing but grilled chicken. We're not going to go from sitting on our couch every day after work to working out 5 days a week. And we're not going to go from living a life doing mostly not in alignment activities to trying to do a 180 and completely uproot our life. Maybe you can, but for most of us, that's not going to be sustainable. What we're doing is we're shining the light of awareness so we can start to make baby steps. You know what? Right now, I have a lot on my plate. Like, I've been tracking my food for 5 to 7 days. I'm dipping my toe into 2 days a week of 2 exercises. I've been red flagging my thoughts. And I don't feel like I have capacity for a lot of other change. So I'm going to make this list and then I'm just going to leave it for now. Or I'm going to make this list and you know what? I'm going to just red flag how much time I'm spending scrolling on social media. Maybe I don't change anything. Maybe with all the change going into my life, I need that still. Maybe that's my outlet and that's okay. The point of this episode and the one before it, there's no should, there's no have to, right? Your life is wonderful the way it is. You are wonderful the way you are. And when we make the decision that we want more, that we want to step into this life where our soul is unleashed, where we know that we are living the life that we were put in this lifetime to live, it is never all or nothing. It is never black or white. It is never a 180. It's about shining the light of awareness and then taking these first baby steps to start consciously building the life that sets our soul on fire. You can download a totally free chapter of my best-selling book, Becoming Mind Strong, The Truth About Health, Fitness, and the BS That's Holding You Back by going www.becomingmindstrong.com.